TJ Works Wood, everybody. Today we're going to be building a memory box for a good buddy of mine and his wife to commemorate their wedding. It's going to be made out of walnut and Purpleheart. I'm going to start here by milling up the walnut. I'm using the 1950s Craftsman 4-inch jointer that I rebuilt and restored. I have two videos on that. It was a pretty lengthy restoration. I'll put the links to that in the description below. This is the first project I've used this jointer on, and I was pretty happy with the outcome. Once I have one edge jointed, I'll take it over to the table saw and use that now straight edge as a reference on the table saw fence to straighten up the other side. Now this is pretty great to have that, but you can actually use your table saw as a jointer. There's plenty of references for that online. Now this part I both enjoy and I'm terrified of, but I'm going to use a table saw to resaw this board to get it down to half its width roughly, and then I'll run it through the planer. As you saw, I measured the thickness of this plank, and then I put the table saw fence at about half that distance. And then now what I'm going to do is just put the saw blade up just a little bit. I'm going to run the board through it, and then I'm going to flip it end over end and not rotate it. That way the table saw fence is on the same side of the board every pass. And I'll go one pass on one side, one pass on another side, and then you'll see that I raised the table saw blade up just a little bit. I could have probably been more aggressive here and raised it up more to do less passes, but like I said, this is a little bit scary for me to do, so I just go a little at a time. Gets the job done, and makes me feel a little bit safer. Now that I have it basically cut in two, I'll use my Japanese pull saw and just go to town on it. It goes really quick. These pull saws are sharp. Also, I got it down pretty well cut in two simply by using the table saw to resaw it. So this went by really quick. Now there is a little bit of a ridge in between them, and they're not exactly the same thickness, so I'll use the planer to get them both to the exact same thickness. Okay, so we got these two milled up. Pretty exciting to have it like done. So yeah, they're what you call book matched. So was like this, and now flip it like that, and they're basically mirror images of each other for the most part. A few little discrepancies here and there, but especially after going through the planer. But yeah, looks pretty cool. We're gonna split it up, even though it's book matched. We're gonna split it up with some Purpleheart in just a little bit. Dusty thing here. Now that I got the Purpleheart cut to length, I'll go ahead and cut it to width. Now it is thicker than the walnut that I had, and I don't want to just run it through the planer over and over and over again. It seems like a pretty big waste of wood, so I'm actually going to resaw this as well, and I'm going to use the piece of walnut that I've already resawn and gotten to the desired thickness kind of as my guide to run the Purpleheart through and get that to the right thickness as well. Here I'm just marking the places that I want to put the biscuits. Now I'm going to mention it here in a minute, but biscuits really don't help with stability or strength. They're just more for a guide to get everything lined up when making a panel like this. But let's look at how that's done. Biscuit joining time. So I marked where I want the biscuits to be on each board. So we're just going to go ahead and start cutting them, I guess. And then we will align our lines. So as you can see, we have this, take a biscuit. It goes in there like that, and then you'll have another one. And it doesn't add too much support, but it really helps align everything. So I'm just going to do a bunch of these down this row, and then yeah, we'll be good to go. Start putting them together. If you don't have a biscuit joiner, you could also use dowels, or if you have a festival domino, you could use that. I think dowels and the dominoes would add strength as well. You also don't have to use any of these things if you just want to glue it up and clamp it all together. It'll work, but the alignment might just be a little harder to do. So there's a couple things I forgot to record during this build, and the panel glue up is one of them, but you can see it's glued up, and I'm getting rid of some of the squeeze out. Here I'm cutting a rabbet into the panel, and the reason I'm doing that while it's full instead of doing the individual sides is because this is just way easier. You just one pass, you know everything's going to be the same distance from the edge and the same depth. Now I do kind of call an audible later and decide to do the bottom a different way, and you'll see that, but I still use this rabbet as reference to the depth of the bottom once I decide to actually put it in. That's 16. That's 8. Now, of course, everybody's favorite part, sanding. This is going to be the inside of the memory box, so I'm just kind of getting it sanded down. It doesn't have to be sanded super smooth at any point because I am going to be putting a felt lining on it, but I kind of want to get rid of all the unevenness of the glue squeeze out that I was not able to use the chisel to get off, and just kind of pre-prep it. So when I cut it, I'm not having to worry about it being lumpy for the miters. We'll figure it out. I'm going to go ahead and square up the end here, and then this box is actually going to be rectangular, not a cube. So what I'm going to do is cut one side, and then the front, and then the other side, and then the back. That way the grain will kind of wrap all the way around, and it won't match up in the back corner where the ends will wrap around to meet each other, but I still think it'll look good. Now, I did mark out the biscuits specifically in spots where I knew the panels would not end, so I don't have to worry about cutting through a biscuit here and making it visible in the corner. once it's built. Now we're going to cut the miters for the box, and I'm actually going to set this to slightly more than 45 degrees. That way when it's all put together, if there is a gap, the gap will be on the inside corner and not the outside. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, the Four Eyes channel have a good explanation of that, and I'll try to remember to put a link of that in the description. If I don't, just leave a comment reminding me and I'll get that added. Now it's time to make the panel for the top and the bottom. I didn't want to use my joiner because I don't know if you can barely see it there at the top right. It's just got a bunch of stuff piled on it and all around it. So this was just much quicker to get my tapering jig and set it up square to joint the edge of the panel pieces. And then I can just, again, reference that side up against the table saw fence whenever I cut the other sides, and that way you get them flat. Using the joiner might have been more difficult to get it out and everything, but I should have put in a zero clearance plate here because, whoop, thankfully nothing bad happened. It was just scary, but that really kind of freaked me out. Got to be safe working with a table saw, and that was a mistake. I should have used a zero clearance insert there. But I'm going to do the same thing with the Purpleheart. I'm just going to joint one side, and since I don't need it that thick, we're going to do a little bit different thing here on the top than we've done on the sides, just to give it a little bit more detail. I'll describe a little bit more here. Alright, we're going to do kind of a similar pattern, but a little different, just to shake it up a little bit. We're going to put walnut in the middle. This is kind of a design out of necessity, because when I cut all of my bits, none of them quite added up to the size, so I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, but I think it's going to look really good. I guess it's something to be seen. Looks like I might need to just double check and joint these to get flat edges. Yeah, not quite flat, so let me go ahead and joint these, and then so we'll get these going, and then I'm going to join these. I'm going to put another groove in the another lip here on the bottom, well, bottom or top, whichever way you want to look at it, and then we're going to kind of have like a floating lid and a floating base. I think it'll look pretty cool. Stick with me. I think it'll work. All right, let's do this. Let me joint this. I'll do that off camera, and then we'll do the biscuits, make a panel, and see where we're at. Alright, so here I will show you how the biscuit jointer works, if you haven't seen it before. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Probably shouldn't use a framing hammer to beat it into submission, but that's the closest thing I had laying around. But anyway, it's really easy. You put the biscuits in there and it lines it up. So we got this panel glued up. This is going to be the top. Not quite done with it yet. I've got to trim it, obviously this way, this. Clean some of this up. This is good for tonight. I'm going to let this dry, and then head to work tomorrow. Do that because, you know, bills and whatnot. And then, yeah, back to it. And I should be getting this pretty well done pretty soon. So, all right, good night. All right, so to get the end of this kind of jointed up and straight, I'm going to use the old super glue masking tape trick and get this squared up. And what you do is just put masking tape down on two sides or on the piece that you want to work with, and then a straight piece. Glue it, super glue them together, let it cure, and then take it over to the router. Use a flush trim bit and get that thing flush trimmed. Once you get this completely trimmed up nice and flush, you can use that in there as a reference and go over and put it through the old table saw, then clean out your rabbet there. And now what we're going to do is get the other rabbet on the other end done to put the top in. This was the easiest way I could think to do this, to keep it consistent. Probably should have done it all at once on the larger panel, but that might have been unwieldy. So each individual panel is how we're going to go. Go about ½ inch in to put the rabbet, to then put the lid in. You'll see what I'm talking about here in just a little bit, but I do this on every single panel, and I go really slow just to, I don't know, it just seems safer to go slow. It could be wrong, fast might be the way to go, but I like to go slow on these particular cuts. If you have any disagreements or information on that, please leave a comment. Let me know. I'm always willing to learn. Alright, as you can see, got a dry fit and it looks really good. I'm now going to sand the inside portions once again, just to get all the burrs and any excess glue that I missed the first sanding. It's easier to do this now when it's all apart and you can get to the inside, rather than when it's all put together and you have to sand inside a box, which is never fun. But we'll get that done and then we'll start getting it glued together. Alright, so masking tape to the rescue again. This is actually one of the first woodworking tricks or hacks or whatever you want to call it. But you just masking tape up the joints on the back, which will be the outside of your box, and then you glue into the miters and get it spread around in all four corners really well, and then you just kind of roll it up on itself, which is for some reason just the most satisfying feeling when putting a box together. It's even more satisfying when the bottom or top is rabbited in. Ooh, feels good. Didn't go that route this way, but check it out. I love this. Just fold it up and now we have a box. Obviously the camera angle is not the best, but I'm gonna throw some clamps on here and then let it sit overnight. Alright, so the glue is dry. I'll get these clamps off of here, and I'm super excited about how this turned out. It's sturdy. Even the tape didn't want to come off, which, I got it off. But now I'm just going to clean out the glue that kind of squeezed out in the corners. And other than that, it's pretty much ready to roll. I'm going to glue in the bottom panel. It needs a little bit of persuasion here in just a second, but it goes in nicely. The top, as I'll explain in just a minute, needs a little bit of love, but other than that, I am super excited about how this fits and how this looks. Okay, well, we got a box with a bottom. Let this dry a little. Come back when it's dry. The top needs to be trimmed down just a little bit, and then I'm going to put that on. Then we're going to do some reinforcement of the corners. So looking good, making some progress today. Love it. So I forgot to record myself gluing the top on, but as you can see right there, I did have to trim it down both length and width, but height worked really well. And I put the biscuits at a very either deep or shallow, however you want to look at it, height, so they're actually hidden inside the lip of the box, so you'll never see those. Now I am going to be putting 3 splines on each corner edge, so a total of 12 edges, so what is that, 36 splines I guess. But as you can see, I used my spline cutting jig and spacers, so I kind of did a few angles here so you could kind of get a better view and better idea of exactly how this works. I've got my 3 spacers, take a pass, take a spacer out, take another pass, take another spacer out, and as you can see up there at the top, it doesn't get it all the way, but I'm going to use some chisels and clean that out. But it does get me to the width that I want on all the pieces and corners. Now that I have all the splines trimmed off, I'm just going to put a little round over to the bottom and side edges, just to kind of give it a better look and feel. Here, now that all the splines are in and the edges are round over, I am going to go ahead and cut the top off, and I do it this way just so everything is lined up and everything matches perfectly. You just build kind of a cube-esque box and then chop the top off and everything lines up perfectly, both visually with the grain and just physically. You don't have to worry about making the top exactly the same size because the top was made when the box was made. It's just easier and, in my opinion, looks better. So multiple ways to do it. This is the way I chose to do it. Alright, so this box is going to be pretty big, so I'm going to go ahead and put handles on it, just made out of Purpleheart, and I'm going to put just a little bit of a, curvature on the corners so they're not so sharp. It also looks a lot better too. I'm just using a template guide here on the router table with a flush trim bit. So now that I get the handles made, I'm going to put and I can't remember for the life of me, so we'll call it a reverse roundover cut into the bottom of the handles, so that way something to kind of grip on, and we'll smooth out that edge too, but I think it looks pretty good. Now let's get them mounted to the box itself. I was really struggling with the idea of how to attach these handles, and then it just kind of came to me. I was like, oh, I've got this walnut dowel left over from another project. I want to see if I can make it work, and I think it turned out fantastic. So I struggled getting them in. I really came into my own when I did the sixth one, which was the last one. Really figured that one out. But all in all, I think it looks really well. The bottom lip of the handles was a little sharp, so I just broke the edge with some 220 grit, and then kind of smoothed out the dowels meeting and getting them flush with the outside of the handles. But overall, I really like the way they turned out. All right. Tried and true Danish oil. Let's see how it does. My free cloth. This was my first use of the Danish oil, and I'm very impressed. I've used it on a couple more projects since this one, and yeah, I really like it. I'm going to be using this a lot more. It really brings out the grain and just makes the walnut pop, brings out the color in the purple heart. It's a new favorite of mine. I wanted to do something special for this box, so I put in a black felt on the interior, on all of the interior surfaces, sides, bottom, top, and it just gave it a real good look and feel. I'm doing it inside on my dining room table because I didn't want to do it in the shop where it was all dusty, and I figured if I got a bunch of dust in here I would never get it out, so better safe than sorry. But this was a learning experience putting all that in. I really liked it. I might be using that more. Gonna go ahead and clamp down the lid so it is nice and firm up against the body of the box and doesn't slip around when I put these hinges in. I got these hinges at Woodcraft, and I think they just look amazing up against this walnut. Using a self-centering bit so the holes are perfectly aligned, and I just used a screwdriver. I don't want to use any power tools on this. I was afraid to strip out the holes, but got that in. And then I'm going to do the same on the front with the latch. I'd just like to thank everybody that's watched, and if you are new to the channel or you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe and leave some comments. I'd really like to know what you think, good or bad. I'm more than happy to take criticism, hopefully constructive, but you know, criticism is criticism. So again, thanks for watching, and I've got a bunch of other videos. Feel free to check them out, and I'll be seeing you on the next one. Have a good one.